Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, folks, we're going to talk about why South Carolina can't have nice things. And there is a warning attached to this for the South Carolina folks. Look, I know you've been through a tough time. It's been a tough year for you, and losing players to the transfer portal's kind of become a normal thing for you. So if you're somebody that's easily kind of, bothered or upset by certain coverage, this is not the show for you.
Just walk away.
Exactly. Listen to Humongous. He knows best. Just walk away, because this is going to upset you. The next thing you know, you're going to have a participation trophy. You're going to put on your Gen Z toboggan, your safe space, all that stuff. So, there's lots of videos on YouTube about cats and kittens, and stuff like that. That's fun. Little dogs and all kinds of things like that will make you happy. But let's get into South Carolina and why they can't have nice things. Oh, and sorry this is kind of late in the day. Normally I try to get my shows out between 5 or 6 o'clock, but I was stuck at work all day and just couldn't get it done.
Drink it up, big boss! All right, drink it up, gambler.
But anyway, let's get back into the show here. And of course, this has been all over. Juice Wells, their star wide receiver. He's entering the transfer portal. We've all heard about that. And I'm sure, of course, South Carolina people are distraught about it. They're really upset. And Juice Wells was a preseason All-American, going to be a real baller. He's been a baller since he's been there. But he's entered the transfer portal. And this is pretty typical for South Carolina. They lost Marshawn Lloyd last year. They also lost Jaheim Bell. And now they're losing their top wide receiver in Juice Wells. So it's hard to be a Carolina fan right now. It's very frustrating for them. It's almost like they're a developmental team where they develop players, make them good, and then they go and get paid somewhere else, which is super frustrating for South Carolina. We're going to go into why South Carolina's struggled so much, and there's a couple of reasons why. One of the reasons will upset the South Carolina people. That's why I kind of gave them that warning. And there's not much you can do about it either. And it's not money. Money is a problem for you. I'm not going to say it's not, and that'll be one of the issues. But the biggest problem is something else. Now, before we get started, Marshawn Lloyd transferred last year, and he was their best running back. He was really good. Man, that guy was a baller. He went to USC and played for the Trojans. He ran for 820 yards, 9 touchdowns, a 7.1 yard average, and he runs tough. I mean, when he hits you, he knocks the crap out of you. Very hard to take down. And South Carolina wound up going with basically a JUCO running back who ran hard, but he's not Marshawn Lloyd by any stretch. And they really struggle at running back, and they needed Lloyd something awful. So losing him was pretty devastating to them. Now let's look at Jaheim Bell. Here's Jaheim. He went to Florida State. Of course, they're undefeated. 39 receptions, 503 yards. He's a tight end, so they've used him a lot. 2 touchdowns with an almost 13-yard average. So he's also had a tremendous season, both Marshawn Lloyd and also Jaheim Bell. So I think they're pretty happy they transferred because they're getting a lot of playing time and a lot of success. Not to say they wouldn't have had success at South Carolina. They would have both been starters, obviously. But like I say, there are reasons why. And lastly, you got Juice Wells, who, again, was preseason All-American. He only played, I believe, in 1 ball game and hurt his leg. But the years before, you can see 2021, 83 receptions, 1,250 yards. Then at South Carolina, 68 receptions, 928. Just absolutely was outstanding. Really hard to deal with. Scored a lot of touchdowns and was a real pain. And they kind of had a problem there at the end. They weren't sure if he was well or not. And I'll show you what Shane Beamer was saying prior to the last few games.
I would say he's okay. And I know you got to ask the question. I would just say if it gets to the point these next 3 games where Juice is able to play, I'll let you know. And, I don't want to come in here every single week. He's basically out until I tell you otherwise, and don't anticipate him playing this week. But I'm not trying to BS you. There's a chance that he could play. It's just kind of where he is mentally and where he is physically and where we are with things. He told you guys on the teleconference Sunday, he ran on Sunday. He ran well. He was out at practice today. And he didn't practice today, but he was out there. So he continues to get closer and closer, but he's out right now. That could change tomorrow. That could change next week, but I don't really know. Kind of just a day-to-day type thing.
As you can see, the coach was pretty frustrated by that. You could tell he didn't, talking about where he was mentally, and that was 3 weeks out. So he didn't play any towards the end, and then he entered transfer portal. So obviously a lot of people are upset, and they were kind of aggravated.
Good, then get the hell out of my life. Who needs you? Beat it. Leave me alone.
I'm sorry, babe. I didn't mean that either. I just yell sometimes because I get so scared.
Yeah, needless to say, they weren't happy about him leaving, but they didn't want him to leave at all. So that probably sums it up kind of perfectly with all three of those guys. And now we're going to talk about why South Carolina can't have nice things. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, they're in the state, and they are supposed to be the big team in the state. They're the South Carolina Gamecocks in South Carolina. The problem is there's a guy by the name of Dabo Swinney. And Dabo is taking the lion's share of recruits out of South Carolina and nationally, and that's affected my Tennessee Vols as well. Clemson being really good the last 10 years has hurt the Tennessee Vols. It's been kind of really bad on South Carolina because they take what they want in South Carolina and they go out and get the rest.
I drink your milkshake.
And South Carolina is left with a lot of guys that Clemson didn't necessarily want. And South Carolina's got a lot of good recruits. It's a good-sized state. They've got a lot of good talent, but Clemson's taking what they want. So you've got that problem, which irritates South Carolina to no end because they can't stand Clemson. As you know, when in-state teams like that actually play every year, the feud is brutal. And they're taking their recruits. Then on top of it, South Carolina doesn't have deep pockets to be able to compete on the NIL level. They've got some NIL money, but not big money like a Texas or a Texas A&M, for example, who's obviously talking to Juice Wells from what we understand. And, of course, they've got all that oil money. They can do whatever they want. Fortunately for us in the state of Tennessee, we're the dominant team in the state by far, even though there is Vanderbilt and Memphis. Vanderbilt is, a school that's so hard to get into, it's really not an issue. And they don't have that, we don't really have to compete with them when it comes to recruiting to speak of. So we're the big dog. So even though Tennessee's not a huge state, it's not Georgia or Florida, we are kind of the only game in town. So we get whatever we want out of the state of Tennessee, and then we've got to go around to Georgia and places like that and get the rest. Whereas South Carolina, they need to get what they want out of South Carolina, then go out and get the rest. And they can't do that because of Clemson. And they don't have unlimited money. Tennessee's got a lot of money because we started the NIL. We were one of the very first and got it going right off with Spire Sports, and it's done great. So we've been, we were able to get, for example, the number one player in the country in Nico, and I think he's going to be outstanding this year. And there's a lot of people in Tennessee talking about getting Juice Wells. I don't think we need a slot receiver. I just don't. I think Juice is really good, but I don't think that's where we need to spend a ton of money. We need to spend money on the offensive line, protect Nico, and places like that, and also in the defensive secondary is where I'd spend money because that's where we're weak. Protect Nico and fix our problems in the secondary. And we've got a really nice class coming in. I feel good about it. We've got 2 5-stars coming in. Again, we've got a 5-star wide receiver. I just don't see getting a guy over him who's, you got a 5-star coming in. He's probably going to play pretty quickly. Plus, we've also got Squirrel White, who is outstanding, and he's a slot guy as well. So I just don't think we need help there. Plus, look, we're going to have a quarterback that throws a very catchable ball in Nico, and he's very accurate. And I think we'll return to a 40 points a game type team as opposed to the low 30s, which is where we're at now. We finished number 7 in the country and number 1 in 2021 and 22 as far as offensive scoring. We're way down this year. That won't be the issue next year. And even though Joe played fine, he played okay. He just wasn't the level that we're used to, and we're getting ready to get back to that. But again, protect Nico, and we're going to be fine at wide receiver. I don't see that being an issue. But that's the problems that South Carolina's got. They've become almost a developmental team where they take a good player or a decent player, develop them up, and then they go off somewhere and show off their skills and get paid. And that's got to be super frustrating for South Carolina. And for Shane Beamer, I've already told you what I thought happened last year. He won those 2 top 10 teams, and I've already told you I think, there's an assumption that they got help from one Connor Stallions. I can't prove it. It's a rumor. But a lot of people think that. And I do as well. It may come out with the NCAA and also the FBI being up there that they might have received assistance on sign stealing or received the signs because Michigan was trying to get in the way of teams that could possibly kick them out of the playoffs if they lost to Ohio State last year. And that would have been Clemson and Tennessee. We were number 5, they were number 9. And the only other team that had one loss was USC, and they had to play 3 top 20 teams remaining. Our only tough game left was South Carolina. And it wasn't that tough up until, boom, all of a sudden, they're an offensive juggernaut for 2 weeks in a row. And then they're back to what they started out this season, 2-6. So really weird, and finished 5-7. They beat Jacksonville State at the end, and Vanderbilt, and beat Kentucky by 3, scoring 17 points. Somehow they scored 63 and then 31. So nobody knows how that happened. But anyway, folks, I think that's why South Carolina just can't have nice things. 3 outstanding players that are playing really well at Florida State, USC. Obviously, Juice Wells will play somewhere like Texas and probably ball out. And South Carolina stuck there. Look, they developed them, and they don't get to enjoy the fruits of all that work. Another team does, and that's got to be frustrating for South Carolina. I don't know how they fix it. I really don't. Unless Clemson goes down. If Dabo were to retire or somebody were to buy him out, pick him up, maybe went to Alabama after Nick retires, and Clemson, was to go down, that's the only way South Carolina, I think, can go up. I don't see them being great as long as Clemson's really good. It can't happen. You can't have 2 teams in that small state both be outstanding. It's not going to happen. It's not like Georgia. See, Georgia doesn't even have anybody to compete with except Georgia Tech, and that's a hard school to get into too. That's why Georgia they just pick out 5-stars down the road. I mean, they can just walk down a block or 2 for Kirby Small. I'll take you 5-star and you 5-star. We've always loved Georgia. We've been watching it our whole lives since we were born. I know. Come on. Well, we don't let NIL. Oh, sure. We'll give you some of that. No problem. You're going to go to Georgia anyway, though, because you grew up watching it. Then LSU, same boat. They love the LSU Tigers. They grew up there. They live there. And they don't have to compete with anybody. Now, Florida at least has to compete with Florida State, Miami, and now UCF. Don't forget about Gus Malzahn. He's already said there's 4 major players in Florida now, not 3. And that made them so mad in Florida. They were so angry. Even Florida State and Miami lost their mind over that because they know it's hard to have 3 schools in Florida and compete with the recruiting, even though there's a ton of players there, much less 4. So Gus Malzahn had them all tore up. So I think that's Clemson's their problem. It really is. And them hearing that is going to upset them. So if you made it this far, I'm sorry. Hopefully you're tough enough to handle it. And you knew it going into it that, it's probably going to be something you couldn't fix. The NIL money, maybe you can fix that. You might be able to, and that would help you a lot. But you need Clemson to not be good.
Hello?
That's what it boils down to. And as long as they are, you're going to struggle. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's me continue to cover, of course, my Vols, the SEC, and any other big stories that pop up, Michigan, for example, and Ohio State. If you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just hit that little button. I'd appreciate it. And right over here's the most recent video, YouTube. Thanks, you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.